ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. Please join me and my guest on this next interview. Now, the war in Ukraine continues to see intense battles and significant human costs. One glimmer of hope in this dire situation comes through prisoner exchanges, with the largest swap involving 206 soldiers. This exchange, brokered by the UAE, saw Ukraine welcome home soldiers captured during key battles, including in Kyiv and Donetsk. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss the implications of this exchange is Rostyslav Khotin, senior editor for the Ukrainian service of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Hello.
So can you help us understand how significant is this latest prisoner exchange in the context of the ongoing war?
Yeah, it's significant because the sheer number of exchange officers and soldiers of Ukrainian armed forces, National Guard, border guards and police is significant. It's the latest exchange consists of 103 prisoners of war which were exchanged. And it comes, for the next day after another exchange happened when 49 Ukrainians were exchanged. Actually, these exchanges are one-to-one, 49 for 49, and then 103 for 103. Same number of prisoners of war from Ukrainian side and from Russian side have been exchanged in two days in a row. These Ukrainians, released Ukrainians, exchanged Ukrainians were defenders of Donetsk, Kharkiv region, Kyiv region. Some of them fought battles and were taken prisoners of war at the initial stage of the war in Chernobyl zone near the Chernobyl nuclear power station. I just want to remind you that battles happened there in the spring of 2022, and these people were taken prisoners of war then by Russian side. Also, some of them are defenders of Mariupol in the Donetsk region, and some of them also who were defenders of Mariupol actually defended the Azovstal steel plant, the heroic defense of Azovstal. Some of them are Azovstal heroes now released, and this exchange and the previous exchange happened thanks to the mediation from by the United Arab Emirates. It's a not new role for Emirates to play this mediating role during these exchanges. They have been involved for a long time, and also the significance is that Ukrainians exchanged Russian captives who were taken in Kursk region in the Russian Federation recently, when Ukrainians launched unexpected attack, the operation at the beginning of August. So Ukrainians have captured more than 600 Russian soldiers, and these, as Ukrainian officials put, the exchange material, reserves, exchange reserves. So Ukrainians are capturing Russian soldiers, taking them prisoners of war, and then exchange them for imprisoned Ukrainians kept by Russian side. Also,
right.
The significance
a lot to break down here, so let's take it point by point, because you mentioned earlier that a lot of these individuals who are released are actually fought very iconic, high-profile battles. Heroes of Mariupol, for example. How does these prisoner exchange, how is it seen by the Ukrainian public?
The public also, of course, welcomes them as heroes. That's the difference between Ukrainian welcoming and Russian welcoming. From Ukrainian side, they are given Ukrainian flags. They have ability to call their relatives, their moms, dads, their brothers, sisters, children in some cases. They are welcomed, the heroes who are coming home after Russian captivity. While Russian side, it's not necessarily the same welcoming. They are not welcomed. It's kind of Russian army has this tradition from World War II, when Stalin didn't like when Soviet soldiers were taken prisoners. He didn't like that. It's this Soviet slash Russian tradition treats prisoners of war as kind of traitors. Why didn't you die on the battlefield? Why you allowed you to be taken as a prisoners of war? Kind of this kind of Stalinist tradition of treating prisoners of war like traitors. It still remains in the Russian psychology, in the psychology of Russian generals, and so on and so forth. That's one thing. The second thing is, yes, it's true indeed that Ukrainians who were exchanged, they fought the iconic battles in the Chernobyl zone, in Mariupol, Battle of Kyiv, Battle of Kharkiv. Yeah, that's true. And also, the thing is that now there is this kind of good tendency of exchange after exchange after exchange. Just want to remind you that at the end of August, 115, significant number of Ukrainians have been exchanged for the same number of Russians at the end of August, despite the Kursk operations, because Russia said immediately after Kursk operation by Ukrainian armed forces started, Russian side said, no more exchanges, no more exchanges. But nevertheless, both sides proceeded and exchanged 115 people in August, at the end of August, and now 49 people on the 13th of September, and 103 people, prisoners of war, on the 14th of September.
All right, like you mentioned, this does seem to have set the precedence of exchanging prisoners, and hopefully this will continue to be a trend, at least seeing Ukrainians coming back home. Can you help us understand what has actually changed in this whole calculus, and why is this finally happening?
Because Ukrainians have been taking recently quite a lot of Russian prisoners of war, especially in the Kursk region, so this kind of exchange materials, the exchange reserves, according to Ukrainian officials, have been growing steadily for the last month and a half. More than, as I said, more than 600 Russian soldiers were taken prisoners of war by Ukrainians. So the Ukrainians immediately started having big reserves of human reserves for exchange with Russia. And the thing is that Russians who were exchanged today and yesterday, they spent in Ukrainian captivity not a long time, like maybe months and a half, and so on and so forth. Not a long time. But Ukrainians who were released, they spent in Russian captivity 2 years, more than 2 years, 1 year and a half. They spent in Russian captivity much longer periods of time. Secondly, the treatment of Ukrainian prisoners of war in Russia is quite different from treatment of Russians in Ukrainian captivity. Ukrainians are treated in Russia badly. They lose their weight. They are quite thin.
Yeah, I've seen some of the pictures. They come back looking like bare skin and bones. It's very, very horrifying. You also brought up the involvement of UAE, and I'm wondering if you can help us understand what role does the United Arab Emirates play in mediator in these exchanges, and why has it been effective?
Yeah, you're right. The Arab Emirates have been playing the mediating role for quite a long time already. They are very successful. They try to keep a kind of balancing act, to make a balancing act between Ukraine and Russia. They have good relations with both Ukraine and Russia. They keep diplomatic channels of communication open with Kyiv and Moscow, especially with Moscow with Kyiv. Yeah, it's obvious. They are friends with Kyiv, but they also try to be to keep channels of communication open with Moscow as well, with the Kremlin. So also earlier there were mediating efforts also on the part of Turkey. Turks played a role, and also Qatar. But these exchanges, the latest exchanges, happened thanks to the United Arab Emirates, and yeah, they're trying to mediate. They're trying to keep a balance. Even Putin visited the United Arab Emirates once, not a long time ago. So Ukrainians also try to keep good relations with Arab countries of the Gulf, like Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. They are involved, and they are successfully involved in mediating efforts between Ukraine and Russia for prisoners exchange to be successful.
And do you think this might actually change the international perception of some of these countries that are trying to play both sides, or at least kind of playing a neutral role? Because ever since the beginning of the war, there is a push to try to gain more support unilaterally for Ukraine. But as we see in recent exchanges, the involvement of a neutral party like UAE actually have its place when it comes to coming to the negotiating table.
I would say one thing, that these countries like the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, they are heavyweights in the some matters like prisoners exchange, like Ukraine-Russian war. They are punching above their weight. Despite instinctively they might want to support Ukraine and Ukrainian territorial integrity and Ukrainian sovereignty, but they want to be mediators, so they try to be balanced and neutral. Although the Ukrainian relations with United Arab Emirates are very good, with Qatar as well, with Saudi Arabia as well, but these countries try to be neutral, to be able to mediate, to be able to help with the prisoners exchange. So Ukrainians understand when these countries have also try to have normal working relations with Russia. It's understandable. So no grudges on Ukrainian part.
Right. And last but not least, how could these exchanges influence diplomatic relations between Ukraine and Russia moving forward? Do you think it might be a blip on the radar if, in case any sort of peace negotiation were to materialize?
No, I think it's only a human side of these exchanges is important. I don't think that diplomatic side is extremely important from a point of view of bilateral relations between Ukraine and Russia. These countries are in a state of war. They are enemies. They fight battles. They fight on the front lines. Russia bombards Ukrainian cities. I don't think that these exchanges of prisoners will somehow impact the diplomatic relations between Ukraine and Russia, which are almost non-existent. But
Right.
nevertheless, from the human point of view, these exchanges are very important, especially for Ukrainian side. It kind of boosts morale. This kind of notion that our people are coming home. Let's meet and greet them. People who spent in captivity several years in Russian captivity are already heroes.
Right. So, well, thank you so much for your input and insight. And of course, we are very happy to see these people back in Ukraine. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.